Welcome to Creating VHDs. Now this is going to be a two-part video, and here in part one I just want to talk to you about what VHDs are, and then the less known way, or the less popular way I guess you would say, for creating these VHDs, and then we'll of course touch on Hyper-V as well. Well, first of all, when we start to create a VHD, we need to discuss what a VHD is. It is a virtual hard disk. And a virtual hard disk is really an image file that you can create on the host machine or on your computer. And this virtual hard disk will behave just like a physical disk on a separate physical machine or a separate physical disk in the machine. And then I can make that virtual hard disk bootable. I can install operating systems in it. And so I can run multiple operating systems virtually on a single machine. This is the whole virtualization world. Now, you probably know all this stuff, right? But I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Now, the main limitation for VHDs and the whole virtualization thing is hardware resources. A virtual hard disk has to be large enough to provide space for the operating system and all the data that's going to be stored. So we're talking gigabytes here. The next problem is processor. You have to have enough processor power to split it between your host system that's running your virtualization environment and the actual virtual machine that's being run. And you also have to have enough memory for your host system and for all the virtual machines being run. So usually the limitation you run up against first is hardware resources. A virtual hard disk usually functions as the disk for a virtual machine. Now, those terms are often interchanged out there in the real world, and they're really two different things. The virtual hard disk is what the virtual machine uses as a disk to store its data, its operating system, and so forth. But when someone out there in the real world mentions VM or virtual hard disk, they're probably talking about the same thing, although you may need to clarify it. Now, a virtual machine is a virtual hard disk in the sense that all the files that make up that virtual machine are really packaged into that virtual hard disk. However, a virtual hard disk does not necessarily contain an operating system, and there's a couple of ways to create these virtual hard disks. So just hang in there with me a second and we'll finish answering that question I just asked about virtual hard disks tied to virtual machines. If I'm using Microsoft's Hyper-V, which is their virtualization management tool, I can create a virtual machine. And when I do that, as a part of that, I can create a virtual hard drive for that virtual machine. But I can also use the disk management tool inside computer management to create a virtual hard disk as well. And that virtual hard disk can appear just like a physical disk in disk management. And it's pretty neat stuff. I can mount that thing. It gets a drive letter and everything. It looks just like a regular disk. Now, I've mentioned Hyper-V. Let me go ahead and give you the rest of the story on that. Virtual machine functionality in the Microsoft world is provided by Hyper-V. Now, there are other options out there. There's VMware. There's other things. There's open source things like VirtualBox and so forth. But Hyper-V is Microsoft's enterprise developed, really fine-tuned, really complex, really powerful virtualization platform. And it's been beefed up in Windows Server 2012. Now, it is a virtualization technology or a hypervisor, and we use Hyper-V to create, manage, and execute or utilize the virtual hard disks that are used to create virtual machines. So Hyper-V handles that whole world. It creates the virtual machines, runs them, can create, manage, and utilize the virtual hard disks that are used inside those. Now, how do we get Hyper-V? This is a really cool thing. It's no longer a standalone product that you buy and install separately. It is installed as a server role on a Windows Server 2012 installation. So just go out there into Server Manager, add a server role, add Hyper-V. Now, once that has been installed, VHDs and VMs can be created using the Hyper-V Manager. And you'll get through it through tools, just like we've been doing everything else through the part of the course. Now, in part two, I want to show you how to create a virtual hard drive using that computer management tool.